The morning was quiet when Liam boarded the train, settling into a window seat with his backpack and a book for the long journey ahead. At 19, blond, blue-eyed, and athletic, he was used to attracting looks. But he hadn't expected a man in the carriage, with an irresistible presence and breathtaking appearance, to look back at him with such interest. After a while, the older man, who seemed around 40, approached him. With tan skin, dark hair, and a toned body, he exuded confidence. When he sat down nearby, Liam felt the air turn almost electric. Traveling alone? The man's deep voice asked, carrying a slight accent that sent shivers down Liam's spine. Yes, alone, Liam replied, noticing the intensity in the eyes of this man who introduced himself as Alejandro. With each exchanged look, the tension between them grew, a silent but undeniable attraction. Liam watched Alejandro smile, one that seemed to promise much more than words. And over time, both realized that their connection wasn't a coincidence. Liam tried to keep his excitement hidden as they continued talking, but his heartbeat quickened each moment. Alejandro's gaze was steady, as if each word spoken was merely an excuse to prolong this encounter. Liam knew then that he'd follow this attraction wherever it led. The train sped on, but for Liam, time felt suspended. Alejandro sat next to him, every gesture, every word charged with a level of intensity that took his breath away. Their conversation flowed naturally, but the glances and smiles hinted at something far more than casual small talk. At one point, Alejandro leaned closer, allowing his arm to brush against Liam's, almost casually. The touch was light, but it was enough to ignite a fire that Liam struggled to contain. He noticed Alejandro's breathing deepen, his gaze locked on Liam's with an intensity that sent a thrill through his body. Liam felt his cheeks flush, but he didn't look away. Alejandro smiled as if fully aware of the effect he was having. "You seem like someone who enjoys adventure," Alejandro murmured, his tone low, meant only for Liam. Swallowing hard, Liam responded, "I think so," attempting to stay composed, though his excitement betrayed him. Alejandro watched his every reaction, intrigued with each passing second. Liam noticed Alejandro's eyes move over him, almost as if studying him like a precious map. And in that moment, Liam knew the attraction was mutual, a shared desire impossible to ignore. As the train approached their destination, the tension between them reached its peak. Alejandro's closeness felt like an electric charge in the air, and both men knew that stepping off that train meant entering a territory neither had anticipated. When the train stopped at the station, Alejandro's gaze met Liam's one last time, and they both understood they weren't ready to say goodbye. After disembarking, the cool night air seemed warm with Alejandro's presence beside Liam. "Care to walk with me to my place?" Alejandro suggested casually, but his tone held a promise Liam couldn't ignore. Liam only nodded, his voice trapped by excitement. He followed Alejandro through the quiet streets, watching the confident strides of the man beside him. They arrived at an elegant building, and Alejandro led him inside without hesitation. Once inside, the door barely closed before Alejandro stepped closer, his eyes fixed on Liam with undeniable desire. The attraction they had restrained during the journey now seemed impossible to contain. Alejandro extended a hand, touching Liam's face, his thumb gently tracing his warm skin. "I've been waiting all night for this," he murmured, his voice low and enticing. Liam's heart raced as Alejandro leaned in, their lips meeting in a kiss that started slow but quickly grew intense. It was as though all the pent-up desire had transformed into a heat that surrounded them both, and Liam surrendered, feeling every touch and movement as a spark of energy. The hours that followed were marked by a depth of passion Liam had never experienced before. Alejandro led him with confidence and fervor that left Liam breathless, each moment drawing them closer. That night, Liam wasn't the same young man who had boarded the train. He felt seen, desired, and completely captivated by this man. When they finally rested lying side by side, Liam looked at Alejandro with a smile. He felt that this was only the beginning of something intense and mysterious. And though he didn't know where it would lead, he knew he was willing to follow every step of the way. In the days that followed that night, Liam and Alejandro began meeting often. There was an undeniable attraction between them, a passion that made every moment together almost electric. Each exchanged glance and touch seemed to ignite a more powerful flame than the last. Alejandro always welcomed him with a smile and a warmth that made Liam feel special, desired in a way he had never known. However, there was something about Alejandro that Liam couldn't quite figure out. Despite their closeness, it felt as though Alejandro kept part of himself guarded, as if there was something he preferred to keep hidden. This barrier only made Liam more intrigued, drawing him further into the mystery of this man. One night, as they lay together, Liam couldn't hold back his curiosity any longer. "Alejandro, you never talk much about your life. Is there something I should know?" Alejandro smiled, but there was a hint of distance in his eyes. "Some things are easier left in mystery," he replied, leaning in to kiss Liam, trying to shift the conversation. For a moment, Liam let himself be carried away, his curiosity momentarily forgotten as he gave into the moment. That night, Alejandro's kiss was more intense, as if he was trying to convey something words couldn't express. Liam allowed himself to be swept up, ignoring the questions swirling in his mind. But even as Alejandro held him close, a part of Liam wondered what was really going on. There was something Alejandro wasn't saying, and that only made him more irresistible. They spent the night together as usual, but now Liam felt a mixture of desire and curiosity, a need to understand more about the man he was beginning to love. He knew that, sooner or later, he would have to find out what Alejandro was hiding. Their encounters grew more frequent, a secret routine that Liam eagerly anticipated. The intensity between them continued to grow, each moment together even more exhilarating than the last. Alejandro knew exactly how to captivate him, each touch filled with a certainty that made Liam lose himself. But as the days went by, Liam's curiosity only grew. One night, while Alejandro was on the phone in the hallway, Liam noticed the tension in his tone, as if he wanted to keep something private. Liam caught fragments of the conversation, words that hinted at a life he knew nothing about. But before he could hear more, Alejandro ended the call quickly and returned with a smile that seemed to cover a certain unease. Liam tried to brush off his discomfort, but something continued to nag at him. He started paying closer attention. The slight tan line on Alejandro's finger where a ring had once been, the way he avoided certain topics, and the hurried phone calls that came every so often. Still, the attraction was undeniable. That night, Alejandro held him with an intensity Liam couldn't resist, and he gave himself over, ignoring the pain of knowing he might be just a part of Alejandro's hidden life. As they lay together, Liam realized that despite the painful discovery, he couldn't simply walk away. Their relationship had become more dangerous, more intense, and as Alejandro held him with the same passion as always, Liam knew he was stepping into a territory with no return, a secret relationship carrying a truth he could no longer ignore. One morning, after spending the night together, Liam woke up alone in bed. He heard Alejandro speaking in hushed tones on the phone, the slightly open door allowing a few words to slip through. Something in his voice sounded urgent, and Liam felt a chill at the seriousness in his tone. Silently, he moved closer, trying to pick up on as much as possible. Then he heard Alejandro mention a wife and children. Shock gripped him, and Liam struggled to keep calm as Alejandro's words echoed in his mind. Everything made sense now. The hurried conversations, the reluctance to share personal details, the aura of mystery that always surrounded him. Alejandro was married, and not only married, but he had a family who likely had no idea about his double life. Liam returned to the bed, pretending to sleep. The weight of the discovery consumed him, but he didn't know how to react. Part of him wanted to confront Alejandro, to demand answers, but another part still craved the connection they had. When Alejandro returned to the room, Liam kept his eyes closed, his heart still racing. Alejandro lay beside him, wrapping him in an embrace that now felt entirely different. Later, as they lay side by side, Liam fought against his own feelings. The attraction he felt for Alejandro was undeniable, but now it was mixed with the reality that he was merely a secret in this man's life. He wondered if he should walk away and never return, but something kept him there, captivated by Alejandro's magnetism, unable to let go. That night, Liam realized that despite the painful revelation, he couldn't simply give up. Their relationship had changed, become more dangerous, and somehow even more intense. And as Alejandro held him with the same passion as always, Liam knew he was entering a forbidden relationship now bearing a truth he could never ignore. Alejandro's secret lingered between them like an invisible shadow, yet Liam continued to see him, unable to walk away from the man who had sparked something so powerful within him. Each encounter was a mix of passion and tension, a delicate balance between desire and the guilt Liam couldn't ignore. Every time they were together, Liam felt the weight of Alejandro's secret increasing. However, the way Alejandro touched him, the intensity of his gaze, made Liam give in without considering the consequences. There was something irresistible about this older man, a confidence and magnetism that made Liam forget everything, even the fact that he could never be more than a hidden part of Alejandro's life. One night, while they were together, Liam could no longer contain his emotions. "Why do you keep seeing me?" he asked, his voice filled with a mix of hurt and curiosity. He needed to understand, to know if Alejandro felt the same way, or if he was just a temporary escape. Alejandro looked at him in silence for a long moment before answering, his gaze serious and intense. "Because with you, I can be myself," he said, his voice heavy with sincerity. "You're the only person who makes me feel free." His words touched Liam deeply, but they also reminded him of the complexity of their relationship. They were living something intense, but it could never leave those four walls. That night, the passion between them was even more intense, as if both knew their time together was limited. Liam surrendered completely, allowing himself to be consumed, ignoring the pain of knowing he would never truly have Alejandro to himself. But as he said goodbye that night, Liam knew he had to make a decision. their secret relationship was something he couldn't sustain forever. And at the same time, the thought of losing Alejandro left him devastated. He was caught between desire and reality, and they both knew the end of their relationship was near. The dilemma that Liam faced grew heavier each day. His relationship with Alejandro was intense, passionate, and filled with moments of raw connection. But the weight of living in secrecy was wearing him down. He couldn't deny the happiness Alejandro brought into his life, yet the pain of knowing he'd never fully belonged to him gnawed at him with each passing day. Every time they were together, Liam felt both euphoria and heartache, torn between the love he felt and the impossible reality of their relationship. One evening, Alejandro welcomed him with the same warm smile, the one that had always made Liam feel like he was the only person in the world. They settled into the familiar comfort of Alejandro's home. But tonight, Liam's heart was restless. The usual spark of excitement felt overshadowed by an ache he could no longer ignore. Alejandro sensed something was different, his eyes studying Liam with a tenderness that only deepened Liam's turmoil. After a few moments of silence, Liam took a deep breath, feeling the words rise within him. "I can't keep doing this, Alejandro," he began, his voice shaky but resolute. "I want you in my life, but I can't just be a hidden part of it." Alejandro's face softened, and he closed his eyes for a moment as if he were trying to absorb the weight of Liam's words. When he finally met Liam's gaze again, there was a sadness in his eyes, a weight that felt too profound to express. "I understand," he replied, his voice steady but laced with an undeniable pain. "But my life, it's not simple. I have responsibilities, a family." His words trailed off, but they carried the unmistakable reality Liam had tried to avoid confronting. Liam's chest tightened, his heart a painful mixture of love and frustration. He understood Alejandro's situation. He really did. But knowing that Alejandro's loyalty would always be divided left him feeling like he was grasping at shadows, loving someone who could never fully love him back. He tried to steady himself, searching for the strength to say what needed to be said. "Alejandro, I don't want to be just a part of your life that you keep hidden. I need more than that." Alejandro looked at him, his gaze filled with regret and conflict. Liam could see the struggle, the desire in Alejandro's eyes to hold on, to fight for them. But they both knew the reality of what they were facing. Alejandro's family, his responsibilities, they were parts of a life he couldn't walk away from. "Liam, you're the only person who makes me feel free," Alejandro whispered, his voice heavy with emotion. "With you, I can be myself. You've brought me a happiness I didn't think I'd ever feel again." His words sent a wave of sadness through Liam, knowing that this happiness, this freedom Alejandro spoke of, was something they could never have out in the open. Liam felt tears pricking at his eyes, his heart breaking even as he listened to the words he'd longed to hear. "Then why can't we make this work, Alejandro?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. But the answer was already there, hanging heavily between them, and Alejandro didn't need to say it for Liam to know. Their lives were too different, divided by commitments and responsibilities that couldn't simply disappear. Alejandro reached out, touching Liam's face with a gentleness that made Liam's resolve waver. For a brief moment, Liam thought about ignoring everything, giving in to the connection they shared and continuing their relationship in secrecy. But he knew that would only lead to more pain, more stolen moments and whispered promises that could never be fulfilled. He was tired of hiding, of living in the shadows. Liam leaned into Alejandro's touch, feeling the warmth of his hand against his skin one last time. He wanted to remember this moment, to hold on to it even as he knew he would have to let go. With a shaky breath, he met Alejandro's gaze, his voice thick with emotion. "I love you, Alejandro," he said, the words leaving his lips with a finality that left no room for doubt. "But I can't be someone's secret. Not anymore." Alejandro's eyes filled with regret, and Liam could see the conflict within him, the desire to hold on, fighting against the reality they both knew they couldn't escape. He pulled Liam into an embrace, holding him tightly as if he could somehow stop time, keep this moment suspended forever. "You'll always have a place in my heart, Liam," he whispered, his voice barely audible. They held each other for a long time, the silence between them saying more than words ever could. The weight of their decision hung in the air, a painful truth that they both understood but wished they could ignore. Liam felt Alejandro's heartbeat against his chest, steady and comforting, yet filled with a sadness that mirrored his own. As they pulled apart, Liam saw the pain in Alejandro's eyes, a reflection of his own heartbreak. As Liam stood to leave, he hesitated at the door, taking one last look at the man who had changed him in ways he couldn't begin to explain. Alejandro met his gaze, a look of quiet sorrow and acceptance in his eyes. Liam knew that he would carry this memory with him forever, a bittersweet reminder of a love that had been real but impossible. Walking away felt like tearing himself apart, but Liam knew he couldn't stay. The life they'd built in stolen moments, in whispered words and hidden touches, was over. And though it left a hole in his heart, he also felt a sense of relief, a quiet certainty that he was doing what was best for both of them. As Liam stepped out into the night, the cool air hit him like a wake-up call. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of what he was leaving behind, but also the strength that came with letting go. He knew that he would always carry a part of Alejandro with him, but he also knew that he was ready to move forward, to find a love that didn't have to be kept in the shadows. The memories of Alejandro would fade in time, leaving behind the lessons and the strength he'd gained from the experience. And though he would always wonder what could have been, he knew that this choice, painful as it was the right one. As he walked away, he felt a strange mix of sadness and peace, knowing that he had loved deeply, but that it was time to let go and find his own path.